Oh good, the charity case made it. That was my sister-in-law, Denise. The moment I stepped through the front door of my mother-in-law's lake house on the 4th of July, she didn't even lower her voice. She wanted me to hear it. She wanted everyone to hear it. Someone tell her the fireworks are free, so she doesn't have to ask anyone for money tonight. My brother-in-law Kevin snorted into his beer. A few cousins exchanged uncomfortable glances. My husband, Ryan, had died 3 years ago, and somehow that had made me the family joke instead of the family tragedy. But while Denise was busy performing for her audience, my phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from my business partner, Olivia. Denise's restaurant just applied for a second emergency line of credit through us. She's $720,000 in debt. Want me to flag it or let it process? I slipped the phone back into my pocket and smiled. Happy 4th, Denise. Great to see you, too. She looked me up and down the way she always did, scanning for evidence of poverty. Still driving that old Subaru, I noticed. You know, there's no shame in public transportation. I didn't bother telling her that I kept the Subaru because Ryan and I had driven it on our honeymoon through Vermont, and that sitting in the driver's seat still made me feel like he was beside me. Some things are worth more than what they cost, but Denise wouldn't understand that. To her, value only existed on a price tag. My mother-in-law, Gloria, greeted me with a stiff hug and a look that said she wished I'd had the good sense to stay home. Since Ryan passed, I'd become an awkward reminder of grief at gatherings built around performance. Gloria wanted her holiday photos to look like a catalog. A widow in a 5-year-old sundress didn't fit the aesthetic. The label of charity case was 4 years old. It started 6 months after Ryan's funeral. He'd been an electrician, a good one, but he died at 38 from a heart defect nobody knew about. No life insurance. We'd been meaning to get it. One of those things you put off when you're young and convinced you have time. The house was mortgaged. The medical bills from the ambulance, the ER, the 3 days on life support before I had to make the worst decision of my life, those piled up fast. I was a mess, barely sleeping, barely eating, trying to figure out how to keep the lights on while drowning in a grief so heavy it felt like it had its own gravity. I went to Gloria once. Just once. I needed $5,000 to cover the mortgage for 2 months while I figured out my next move. I'd been a graphic designer before Ryan, and I married, freelancing from home, but I'd scaled back to part-time when things were good. Now I needed time to rebuild my client list. Gloria had listened with the patience of someone waiting for a traffic light to change. Ryan was always too generous with you, she'd said. He spoiled you, and now you expect his family to do the same. She'd written me a check for $1,200, exactly 1 month's mortgage, and told me this was a one-time gift. Then she'd called Denise, who'd called her friends, who'd somehow turned my one desperate request into a running family joke. Poor Megan, always needing help, can't manage on her own. Ryan would be so disappointed. Denise had been the worst. She'd married Gloria's other son, Kevin, who ran the family's small chain of restaurants. Or rather, Kevin's name was on the paperwork, but everyone knew Denise was the one who managed operations, who made the decisions, who spent the money. Lots and lots of money. She'd positioned herself as the successful daughter-in-law, the one who contributed, the one who earned her place at the table. And she needed a contrast to make that narrative work. That's where I came in. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday barbecue, Denise would find a way to remind everyone that I was the one who'd needed help. She'd offer me leftovers to take home with exaggerated kindness. She'd suggest job openings at grocery stores. She once brought a bag of her old clothes to Easter brunch and presented them to me in front of 15 people like she was donating to Goodwill. What none of them knew, what nobody in the family knew, was what had happened after that $1,200 check. The humiliation of asking for help and being treated like a burden had done something to me. Not broken me. Rearranged me. The grief was still there, like a low hum I'd learned to carry, but something else had ignited alongside it, a determination so fierce it frightened me sometimes. I went back to graphic design, but differently. I'd always been talented. Ryan used to say I could make anything look like it belonged in a magazine, but I'd been content with small clients, local businesses, the occasional website. Now, contentment was a luxury I couldn't afford. I took every job I could find. I worked 18-hour days. I studied UI, UX design, branding strategy, digital marketing. I taught myself to code because clients paid more when you could build what you designed. Within a year, I'd tripled my freelance income. Within 2 years, I'd started an agency. I hired 2 designers, then 5, then 12. We specialized in rebranding for mid-size companies, the kind of businesses that had outgrown their original look but didn't know how to evolve. By year 3, my agency, Whitmore Creative, I'd used my maiden name, had 31 employees and was pulling in $8.4 million in annual revenue. We'd landed contracts with a regional hospital chain, a national coffee franchise, and a tech startup that eventually got acquired by Google. That acquisition alone earned me a $2.3 million consulting bonus. By the time Denise called me a charity case at that 4th of July barbecue, I was sitting on a personal net worth of roughly $14 million. I owned the agency outright, held equity in 6 companies I'd consulted for, and had a real estate portfolio that included the commercial building where Denise's flagship restaurant was located. She paid $11,400 a month in rent to my property management company. She had no idea. I kept it all invisible. Not because I was planning some elaborate revenge. At first, it was just habit. When you've been publicly humiliated by people who were supposed to be your family, you learn to keep your cards close. But over time, the invisibility became a choice. I wanted to see who these people really were when they thought I had nothing. And I saw. Every gathering, every comment, every pointed joke, I saw. Kevin's restaurant business, the one Denise was so proud of, first crossed my radar about 18 months ago. One of my financial advisors mentioned that a chain called Mitchell's Grill had applied for a credit line through a lending firm I had a significant stake in. I recognized the name immediately. It was the family business. The one Denise loved to brag about at gatherings while I sat in the corner nursing a glass of cheap wine she'd specifically bought for people on a budget. I pulled the financials. They were a disaster. Revenue looked solid on paper. 3 locations, averaging $2 million each, but the overhead was astronomical. Denise had renovated the flagship 6 months prior, a $400,000 project that had gone $180,000 over budget. She'd hired a celebrity chef consultant for $15,000 a month. She'd leased a Mercedes under the business account. Personal meals, vacations, spa, retreats, all expensed. The business was bleeding, and Denise was holding the knife. The original loan application was for $300,000. My lending partner flagged it for poor debt-to-income ratio. Any reasonable lender would have declined it. I approved it personally. $300,000 at 9.2% interest, secured against business assets, including equipment, inventory, and the lease on all 3 locations. I told myself it was a calculated investment. The restaurant locations were good, the food was decent, and with proper financial management, the chain could be profitable. With proper financial management, those were the key words. Part of me wanted to believe that Denise and Kevin would get their act together, that the loan would be the lifeline they needed to stabilize and grow, that maybe I'd misjudged them, and underneath the cruelty, they were just people struggling in ways I couldn't see. But mostly, I wanted to know the truth. And the truth has a way of revealing itself when you give people enough rope. 18 months later, at that 4th of July barbecue, I had my answer. Denise had spent the afternoon parading around Gloria's lake house like a reality TV star. New dress, new jewelry, new highlights. She'd driven up in a Range Rover that I happened to know was leased under the restaurant's business account. She was describing her plans to open a 4th location, a rooftop bar downtown, to a circle of impressed relatives. "We're looking at a space on 5th Street, she announced, swirling her wine. "The build-out alone is going to be $500,000, but when you have a brand that people trust, you invest. That's the difference between people who build things and people who just exist." She glanced at me with a smile that was all teeth. My phone buzzed again. "Olivia, second credit application denied by our automated system. She's also 67 days overdue on the original loan. Technically in default territory. Your call. 67 days overdue. While planning a $500,000 expansion. While leasing a Range Rover. While buying new jewelry. While calling me a charity case." Something settled in my chest. Not anger. I'd processed my anger in therapy, in long runs, at 5 a.m. In the quiet hours after midnight when grief and rage used to fight for space in my head, this was something colder, clearer, like looking at a spreadsheet and seeing every number in perfect alignment. I excused myself and walked down to the dock. The sun was starting to set over the lake, the sky bleeding orange and pink. I called Olivia. I need you to do something for me. Name it. Mitchell's Grill, the overdue loan. I want you to initiate formal default proceedings. Full legal notification. Don't mention my name, or the agency, just Lakewood Capital Partners. Megan, it's the 4th of July. I know what day it is. Pause. You sure about this? Send the notification directly to the primary contact on file. That should be Kevin Mitchell's cell phone. Got it. Anything else? Yeah. Text me when it's done. I walked back up to the house and poured myself a glass of the good wine, not the budget bottle Denise had designated for me. Nobody noticed. They never noticed me. It took 11 minutes. Kevin was in the kitchen, loading a plate with potato salad, when his phone rang. He answered casually, mouth half full. Kevin Mitchell. I watched from the doorway as his face changed. First confusion, then concentration, then something that looked a lot like fear. What do you mean default? I thought we had a grace period. Silence on his end, listening. 67 days. That can't be right. Denise handles the payments. She told me we were current. His eyes found Denise across the room. She was still talking about the rooftop bar, oblivious. Asset seizure. What assets? The restaurant equipment. The lease? You can't just. His voice was rising now. Denise finally noticed. She set down her wine glass and walked toward him, her heels clicking on Gloria's hardwood floors. Kevin, what's wrong? He covered the phone with his hand. When's the last time you made the loan payment to Lakewood Capital? What? The loan. The $300,000 loan. When did you last make a payment? Denise's face did something complicated. Confusion first, performed and obvious, then calculation, then something like panic wrapped in defiance. I've been managing cash flow. We have the renovation costs. And the new menu rollout. They're saying we're 67 days overdue. They're talking about seizing our assets. All 3 locations. The room had gone quiet. Gloria had stopped arranging the dessert table. Cousins had paused mid-conversation. Uncle Richard had muted the baseball game. How much do we owe? Gloria asked, her voice sharp. Kevin looked at his phone. The balance is $287,000. Due in 30 days or they begin legal proceedings. $287,000. Gloria's hand went to her chest. Plus penalties and interest. Could be over $310,000 total. Denise straightened her spine, defaulting to the posture she used when she needed to appear in control. This is a misunderstanding. I'll call them Monday. These lenders always have flexibility. We'll negotiate. They said they've sent 4 notices. 4. Denise. Did you get 4 notices? I've been busy running 3 restaurants and planning an expansion. I can't be expected to read every piece of mail. You can't be expected to read mail about a $300,000 debt. I'd never heard Kevin raise his voice at Denise before. It cracked something open in the room, some unspoken agreement that Denise was always right and always in charge. We need to figure this out, Gloria said, shifting into crisis mode. Who do we know? Can we get another loan to cover it? Mom, our credit is shot, Kevin said. Denise maxed out 2 business credit cards. We have a second mortgage I didn't know about until 3 months ago. Nobody's going to lend us money. I did what I had to do to grow the business, Denise snapped. You don't build an empire without taking risks. You don't have an empire, Denise. You have 3 restaurants that apparently can't pay their bills. Gloria was scanning the room now, the same desperate inventory I'd seen family members do in these moments, cataloging who might have money, who might help, who owed favors. Her eyes moved past me without stopping. Of course they did. You don't ask the charity case for $310,000. I set my wine glass down and spoke for the first time in an hour. The second mortgage won't help. Your house is already leveraged to 93% of its value, and your personal credit score is 512, Kevin. 488 for Denise. No institutional lender will touch you. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the lake lapping against the dock outside. How do you know our credit scores? Denise demanded. I know a lot of things. For instance, I know that your flagship location's lease is $11,400 a month. I know because you pay it to Whitmore Property Management, which I own. I let that settle. I also know that Lakewood Capital Partners, the firm that holds your loan, operates under the umbrella of a larger investment group. My investment group. Kevin set his phone down slowly. What are you saying? I'm saying that 18 months ago, when your business was drowning and no legitimate lender would return your calls, your application landed on my desk. Your credit was terrible. Your financials were a mess. Your business plan was a napkin sketch with optimistic numbers. Any sane investor would have passed. Then why didn't you? Denise's voice was barely above a whisper. Because your family. Because when Ryan died and I came to this family desperate and grieving, I was treated like a stray dog who'd wandered into a dinner party. And I told myself that I would never treat family the way you treated me. So when I saw you were in trouble, I helped. Quietly. Without expecting a thank you or a parade, I stood up and walked to the center of the room. Not for drama. Because I was tired of speaking from the margins. I gave you $300,000 because I believed that underneath the designer clothes and the luxury leases and the constant need to prove you were better than everyone else, there might be people worth investing in. People who, if given a real chance, would grow into something respectable. I looked at Denise. Instead, you took my money and leased a Range Rover. You spent $15,000 a month on a celebrity chef consultant who added 7 menu items that nobody ordered. You expensed a trip to Napa Valley as a business development retreat. You took a combined salary of $340,000 from a company that hasn't turned a real profit in 2 years. And you did all of this while standing in this house, at this table, calling me a charity case. Denise's face had gone white. Not the performative white of someone pretending to be shocked. Actually, genuinely white, the color of someone watching their own narrative collapse in real time. You own our building, Kevin said. He sounded like a man doing math he didn't want to finish. I own the building your flagship is in. I hold the note on your loan. I have a security interest in all your business assets, including equipment, inventory, and the leases on all 3 locations. Technically, as of 67 days ago, I have grounds to take everything. You can't. Denise stepped forward, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. Real, unmanageable fear. Kevin built those restaurants from nothing. You can't just. Kevin built them? That's interesting, because based on the loan application, the operating agreements, and the bank records I've reviewed, Kevin's primary role is signing documents that you put in front of him. You've been running this show, Denise. Every decision, every expenditure, every missed payment. This is your house of cards. Gloria moved between us. Megan, listen to me. Whatever happened in the past, whatever was said, surely we can discuss this like adults. Like family. Family. I let the word hang in the air. Gloria, you gave me $1,200 when I was a widow with a dead husband's medical bills. And then you spent the next 4 years letting your daughter-in-law treat me like a punchline. You watched her bring me bags of old clothes at Easter. You heard her tell people I was on food stamps, which I never was. You sat in this room while she called me a charity case, and you said nothing. Not once. Gloria opened her mouth, then closed it. She had nothing. There was nothing to say, and we both knew it. What do you want? Kevin asked quietly. He'd sat down. He looked 10 years older than he had an hour ago. I want what any investor wants. A return on my investment, and evidence that my money isn't being flushed down the drain by someone who confuses spending with success. I pulled a chair out and sat across from them. Here's what's going to happen. Monday morning, you will submit a complete financial restructuring plan to Lakewood Capital. Real numbers, verified by an independent accountant, not whoever's been doing your books and pretending everything is fine. I ticked off the list. The Range Rover goes back. The celebrity chef consultant is terminated. Personal expenses stop running through the business immediately. Your combined salary drops to $120,000 until the loan is current. Every dollar above operating costs goes to debt repayment. That's barely enough to live on, Denise said. It's more than I had when I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor of a studio apartment, rebuilding my career from nothing while you were telling everyone I was too incompetent to support myself. That landed. I watched it land. Denise looked away. I'm not trying to destroy you, I said, and I meant it. If I wanted to, I would have done it already. I've had the legal grounds for over 2 months. I didn't call in the debt because I wanted to punish you. I called it in because you need to wake up. Both of you. I stood and picked up my bag. You have a viable business buried under terrible financial decisions and unchecked ego. Fix the decisions. Manage the ego. Pay back what you owe. And maybe, just maybe, you'll come out of this with something real instead of something that just looks real from the outside. I walked toward the door. The fireworks wouldn't start for another hour, but I'd had enough celebration for one evening. Megan. Kevin's voice stopped me. I'm sorry, for what it's worth. I should have said something. Every time Denise made those comments, every time Mom went along with it, I knew it was wrong and I just went along with it. I looked at him for a long moment. Ryan's brother. Same jawline, same eyes, different man entirely. But still, I could see the ghost of my husband in his face, and it hurt in a way I'd never fully get used to. Ryan would have hated how you've treated me. He would have hated it even more that I had to be the one to say it, because it meant he wasn't here to say it himself. Kevin's eyes filled with tears. First time I'd seen that since the funeral. I turned to Denise, who was standing very still, arms crossed, jaw tight. And Denise, I want you to think about something. For 4 years, you built your identity around being better than me, the successful one, the one who contributed, the one who didn't need help. And for 4 years, you were only able to keep that illusion alive because I was quietly funding it from the other side. Every rent check your restaurant wrote went to my account. Every dollar of that loan came from my pocket. The person you called a charity case was your biggest investor. I let that sit for exactly 3 seconds. The restructuring plan. Monday by noon. I'm not asking. I walked out into the warm July air. The lake was dark now, reflecting the last strip of purple on the horizon. Somewhere across the water, someone was setting off early fireworks, little bursts of color that bloomed and faded and left nothing behind but smoke and memory. My phone buzzed. Olivia, proceedings on hold per your instructions. You okay? I typed back, I'm good. Enjoy your 4th. I got into my old Subaru and sat there for a minute. Ryan's sunglasses were still in the center console. His jacket was still in the back seat. I'd never moved them, probably never would. I thought about what he would say if he could see me now. He'd probably laugh. That big, easy laugh that had made me fall in love with him in a coffee shop 14 years ago. He'd shake his head and say something like, Meg, you could have just told them. You didn't have to go full supervillain. And I'd tell him what I'd learned in the years since he left. That people don't change because you tell them the truth. They change because the truth finally costs them something. Denise would submit the restructuring plan. I was fairly certain of that. Whether she'd follow through was another question. Whether she'd learn anything was yet another. Some people get humbled and come out wiser. Others just get humbled and come out angrier. I'd seen both. But that was her journey. Mine had been made the night I slept on that studio apartment floor, broke and terrified and completely alone, and decided that I would build something so solid that no one could ever make me feel small again. Not because I wanted to prove them wrong, but because I deserved to prove myself right. They called me a charity case because I once asked for help when the world fell apart. They made it my identity because it made them feel secure in theirs. But security built on someone else's humiliation is just a house of cards, and eventually, the wind always comes. I drove home along the lake road with the windows down. No fireworks for me tonight. I'd already had enough explosions for one evening. Some lessons cost $1,200. Others cost $310,000. But the most expensive lesson of all is discovering that the person you spent years looking down on is the same person who's been holding you up. I hoped they were ready to learn. But even if they weren't, I knew something they were only beginning to understand. That real strength isn't loud. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't arrive in a Range Rover or announce itself at the door. Real strength is quiet. It shows up in a 15-year-old Subaru with a dead husband's sunglasses in the console and $14 million worth of patience in the driver's seat. And it remembers everything.